consumed by worry all the time, how can I trust that things will be, well, everything feels urgent and I'm scared of time passing me by, time where I haven't been present. So this is, it's a question of paying attention, right? Like, so whatever it is that you're doing, it's a training of the mind. And, if you're in a difficult situation right now where there's a lot of worry and concern, firstly, there's two parts to it, I'd say. One is paying full attention to the very thing that you're doing right now. And that is a practice in and of itself. Eckhart Tolle, in his book of The Power of Now, and basically all his work, it's just that. It's just that one thing as a spiritual practice. Focus on the present moment. Easier said than done. Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple a lot of times means, it can be quite challenging. So that one thing that you're asking about is really a spiritual practice already. Paying full attention, or paying any attention to the thing that you're doing right now. And we are gifted with this mind that is a problem-solving machine. So therefore, it is constantly going to be picking things out that it says, oh, there is a problem here, there's a problem there, let me solve it. Or before it does that, it actually warns us about the so-called problems that we should be concerned about, in case we need to know that information, because our brain, our nervous system is wired for survival, as I've said many times. So it's going to do that. It's going to pick things out and ruminate over it. So you call it worry. I agree. Think about it over and over again and worry. And worry could be like worrying about it going really bad. Generally, worry isn't a visualization of how amazing it's going to be. It's normally the worst case, or thereabouts. So it's a training and a retraining of the mind to focus on the very thing that you're doing right now, whatever it is that you're doing in any moment. So if you're walking, the full experience of walking, your feet touching the ground, the air on your skin, the temperature, the sounds around you, if there's anything around you like birds in the trees or anything like that, or vehicles going past on the street, or people, like actually paying attention to the full experience of the present moment. And when we do that, what happens is the chatter in the mind doesn't disappear, but there seems to be a distance. So it's like that voice is, if we practice it, I think Osho said this in one of his meditation recordings years ago. I heard that voice, seems like it's just in another room. And I think that's a good kind of depiction of meditation and the practice of getting present. So by paying attention to what is here and now and immersing ourselves completely into it, the mind and the chatter of the mind, there is a distance, and that distance can feel like space or spaciousness, and that spaciousness can feel like a relief, and if it's prolonged, it can feel like a sense of freedom from this constant, it's like waves crashing on a beach, just like constantly one after the other, after the other, after the other. And then on a more practical level, I would say also, whatever you're doing, being present. So this can also be an exercise, where you're completely present. Sit down and, if it helps you to list it out, then list out all the things that actually need sorting in your life. There's definitely times in my life where I've had experiences where things were not going great. And, there were times where there's a part of me that was, and I don't know if this is you, I'm just saying from my experience, when I look back at those times, I wasn't addressing those problems. I would just kind of get into my head about it and just leave those things. And when I left the problems, they wouldn't go away, but they got bigger and worse, for me to deal with. So, and that, it got up to a point where it got really bad, and that's the point when we decide, right? When we decide, okay, it's bad enough now, and I need to do something about it. Hopefully you're not there. You can just decide before it gets worse, wherever you are, and go, okay, here are the things that I actually need to do, like I need to address, and there's a very practical side to that, and there will obviously be the mind having its say about it, and therefore an emotional response to what the mind is saying, and or whatever experience you're having right in the moment, or accumulation of moments. And it's this constant kind of, you're feeling things, right? You're experiencing emotion like worry and things like that, or fear, and then there is a very practical list of things to do. And each of those, areas that you need to go and address, you could probably look at it on a very practical level and say, okay, for me to solve that one problem requires for me to take these steps. And sometimes, when you're wherever you are in your journey, I'll speak to mine. When I was like starting to get myself back on my feet in those situations, I had to start with the simplest step that I could possibly take, the smallest, most manageable step that I could take. And sometimes that smallest, most manageable step might be pick up the phone and make a phone call, or send an email, or go onto a website and find out some information. Like little things like that start to add up. And the moment I started to do one little thing, the emotional result of that was that I would start to feel a bit better. It switched me out of, let's say, the worry or fear into like, oh, I feel a little bit better, a bit good about myself for solving that part, this tiny part of this bigger problem that I know I have, and it's one of the many problems I've got to solve right now in my life. Okay. And then off the back of that, I can go, okay, what's the next little thing I can do? And sometimes you feel like, oh, I can take the next task that is a little bit bigger than that last one that I just did. So let me just go and put some energy into that. And then you do that. And out of doing that, the emotional result of that would be like, wow, I feel even more good, like even better than I felt a moment ago from that previous task. So it starts to build this kind of like snowball effect of feeling good, of goodness. And pretty soon you're like, oh wow, I've actually, broken the pattern of worry and fear and spiraling downwards to, I'm starting to make some progress, and that feels good. And even though it's just like a tiny little chip in the bigger scheme of all of the stuff that I have got to sort right now, because maybe my life feels like a bit of a mess right now, I've made some progress there. And that's what I could manage today, and that's great. And you get to go to sleep and get another chance at it tomorrow. And it starts with the little things, like, set an alarm, turn your phone off before you go to sleep so you don't get bombarded with the world's demands on you. And when you wake up, when your alarm goes off, wake up, like get up, get out of bed. And the first thing you can do, I learned this from, I don't know, I think it was reading or watching something from a Navy SEAL some years ago. And, he was talking about make your bed. And I was like, what? That sounds ridiculous. Make your bed. And so I started doing it. And it's crazy how that little thing, it starts with this tiny little practice of just making the bed. Spend 2 minutes, get up, rearrange the, whatever, and just make the bed. And, it starts to build straight away the moment you wake up, like, oh, I can do this. I can do this day. I can do this. So I've done that. What else can I do? And I can make more progress through my day. And build upon that and keep stacking things through your day that you are getting done. Because the part of us that, kind of eats away is a result of over time maybe letting things slip, or maybe something happened, or you find yourself in a difficult spot, right, because of the trajectory that life went. And I think a lot of people have had their own experience of that in the last kind of 4 years and still not recovered or recovering. We've just kind of sugarcoated, it's just like icing, right, on a cow dung pie. It's just like, oh, everything's great, everything's great. But actually underneath there's a lot of stuff that people are going through, and a lot of people are experiencing a lot of things right now, right, like not fun things either. So I think sometimes we underestimate the little things that we can do, and the little things, how they can accumulate in your day. And right now it's 7 already. You got a few more hours before you get to bed, maybe straight after this. Like, what's one little thing that you can do to bring that feeling of progress. And sometimes I wonder if, definition for happiness is progress, that we're actually making progress in our life. It doesn't just mean doing stuff, but a lot of times when you do stuff, you make progress. Other times, just a sense of progress gives us a sense of achievement, which is, you could say, can be equated to a level of happiness within.